In this virtual lab, you're going to simulate a titration, which is used to determine the concentration of an acid or base solution. And you're going to determine the concentration of an unknown base in this lab. So I want to walk you through how you're going to do this. First of all, you're going to access the simulation from that website, which will pull this up. And then you're going to follow the directions as written in the doc. Okay, so everything is written here, but I want to walk you through these steps. The first step is to determine the type of reaction. I want you to do a strong acid versus strong base. Then you're going to fill the burette. Remember, the burette is this piece of equipment here. Fill that with a base. Then you're going to go to number 3. This is 1, 2, 3 is kind of hidden over here off to the side. When you click that, it opens this up. You can choose the acid and the base. For the first trial, I want you to do HCl and NaOH. The next step, as you did that, notice that the burette filled with the NaOH, which is the base, and the acid is down here in the flask, and the concentration and volume are given to you here. Step 4 is to choose the indicator. You're going to choose phenolphthalein, which gets added to the flask. You won't notice that because phenolphthalein is clear in an acid. And now it's time to start adding the base. This is the tricky part and probably the most time consuming. We want to add the base by adding, probably using this little slider. You don't want to do the whole thing dropwise. And the tricky part is that you don't know how much you're going to need. So how much do you add at once? Who knows? That's why you're the scientist. You're going to add a little bit at a time, keeping an eye on that flask, because eventually down in the flask you'll see it starting to turn, it will start to turn pink. See that? It's turning pink down there in the flask. So I want to add a little bit less at a time as I notice that that starts to turn pink. You can even use this button to add it dropwise. And it will probably, that pink color will stick around a little bit longer. The little stirring thing that you see at the bottom of the flask is a magnet. It's simulating a magnetic stir, which is something that we would use in the lab that would stir it as you're adding your base. Actually, I don't always use a magnetic stir. Sometimes I just make you use your lab partner to stir it while you add your base from the burette. Now this is getting a little bit redundant, but I don't want to add too much because I don't want to go past the endpoint. If you remember from the notes, there we go. Probably added 1 drop too many, but that should be okay. If you remember from the notes, there were those 3 flasks, and the one on the right was bright pink, and that was showing you what it looks like when it goes past the endpoint. We don't want to go past the endpoint, so we don't want that bright pink color. We want kind of a light pink color. Now what you're going to do is, with this molarity and volume of the acid and this volume of the base, we're going to calculate the concentration of the NaOH. So I'm going to enter this information into my data table. So if you go back to this, go down to your data table, trial 1, the formula of the acid that we used was HCl and the base was NaOH. The volume of the HCl was 25 milliliters. The molarity of the acid, I need to look at, it's 0.1428. Over here, the concentration of the NaOH is what we don't know, but the total volume of base, we want to look over here where it says total volume of base is 18.78 milliliters. And so this is what we want to calculate. In order to calculate that, we are going to use our equation from our notes. So in this formula for the acid, there's 1 H plus, the molarity is 0.1428, and the concentration is 25 milliliters. There was 1 OH in the base. The molarity is what we don't know, and the volume is 18.78 milliliters. And so I can put my calculator here and do 25 times 0.1428. I usually ignore the ones, right? Divide by 18.78, and that should give me the molarity of the base. Now here's the tricky thing. I think that this simulation is going to want you to report that to the correct number of significant figures. And we haven't done sig figs in a long time, but here's what you need to know. You're going to need 4 numbers after the decimal point. So 4 numbers after the decimal point is going to be 0.1901 if I round correctly. So 0.1901, and I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to tell you if you're correct or not. I happen to be correct in this one, so I can leave my data in the data table. I'm going to record this, and then I can go on to trial 2. When you do trial 2, you're going to hit reset down here, and then choose whichever acid and base you want to do. Do different combinations. I want you to do 2 new combinations for a total of 3 trials. I just want to show you what it looks like if I had gone past this. Notice how bright pink that is. That's way past the endpoint. So that volume here would not give me a correct molarity here. So you want to make sure that you're getting that to turn that light pink with just a drop or 2 from the burette. So that will take some practice. When you reset this and you choose things, it will give you a whole new molarity and volume, and that's totally random. So we should, I should see some different answers across the students in the classes too. So hopefully that helps you progress through the virtual lab, 3 different trials, and submit it on Classroom.